Hello, welcome to another video. Uh, Before we start, let's quickly review what we studied last week. We talked about the biomes and we looked at how temperature and rainfall affect the biomes, and we said if we change the temperature or the rainfall in a place, we can change the biome of that place. And this is what an important point, because if we increase the temperature in the world, we can affect or change some of the biomes. But today we're going to look at succession. So why this video? Because the finals is coming and we do not have too much time. So I'm going to make this quick video for you as an overview to help you to understand this important topic, succession. So let's begin. And don't forget to take some notes if you think you should take notes. So let's start with these pictures. We have two scenarios. Number one is a cool down lava, and number two is a burned forest. The forest has been burned down, and the plants and animals that live there are all gone. So my question to you is, do you think life can ever grow back here in scenario 1 and 2? If you think yes, you are right. So what kind of life will grow here in scenario 1 and 2 over many years? Let's say 1,000 years. And also, what kind of plants and animals do you think we will see in the first 5 years? What about the next 100 years or even 1,000 years? What do you think? You can pause the video and try to think about some examples of plants and animals in the first 5 years, 100 years, or even 1,000 years. Okay, so how did you do? So if you're thinking you'll see some small plants in the first 5 years, that is correct. And then 100 years the plants may be bigger, and 1,000 years we could even have a forest. So let's move on to the next slide. Now, ecosystems are always changing in a very slow way. So in the picture on the screen, you see that in the first 5 years, there may be small plants which live on a piece of land in the ecosystem, maybe a moss, maybe other types of bryophytes. And after some time, let's say 5 years, these first plants will die and their bodies will go into the soil to become nutrient and food for the next group of plants. These next group of plants may be bigger, we call them shrubs, or small trees. Okay, and then they can live on the land. They too will die, and their bodies will go into the soil for the next group of plants and animals. So the ecosystem will keep changing and changing over many years. And we call this slow change in the species of plants and animals which will live here as ecological succession. Again, what is that? It is a slow change in the types of plants and animals which live in an area or an ecosystem. Now, there are two types of succession. We have primary succession and secondary succession. So let's take a look at some examples. Okay, so what is a primary succession? A primary succession happens in an area where there was no soil before the first plants and animals start to grow. There was no soil. Example is the cooled lava. There is no soil here, just rocks. So some of the first organisms which can grow here is lichen, and this is a picture of a lichen on a rock. Some of the lichens can grow on rocks. They do not need soil because they can absorb nutrients and water from the air. The lichens can grow on the rocks and release chemicals onto the rock. These chemicals can break down the rocks into smaller pieces and later form the soil. Now, because we start with no soil, it takes longer time for the succession to happen, because we first need to form the soil. So let's look at the next type, secondary succession. What is secondary succession? The secondary succession happens in an area where there was soil before. Example is the burned forest. After we burn the forest, there is still soil, the old soil, where new plants and animals can start to grow. And because there is soil before, it takes shorter time, with about hundreds of years. Now, there are three important vocabularies I want you to understand when we talk about primary and secondary succession. The first one is pioneer species. What is that? These are the first organisms to grow, like the lichen, sometimes moss or bryophytes. Next is the intermediate species, and these are the organisms which will come after the pioneer species have died. And the last group of organisms, we call them the climax species, and these are the organisms that will come and replace the intermediate species, and they will keep growing for forever, okay, until maybe the forest is burned, but they will keep growing. So I have some examples here that I want you to try. I want you to group them into primary succession and secondary succession. So you can pause the video now and give it a try. How did you do? So, what is the first one? Let's look at the answers together. So, these two pictures or these two examples are primary succession. Let's look at number one. Pioneer species start growing after glaciers melt. This is primary succession. Why? Because there was no soil before. Before the plants, the pioneer species and the animals and plants started to grow, there was no soil. There was just ice on the rocks. Next, new islands forming after water level drops. This is also primary because there wasn't any soil before the plants started growing. There was just water, and after the water dropped, the land came up and the new plants or the pioneer species started to grow. And these four examples are all secondary succession because there was soil before the first plants and animals started to live there. So after the flood, there was soil. The farmland left to grow back into a forest. Yes, there was soil. Okay, we can see the soil there. New species grow on land after a deadly disease kills off all old plants. Was there soil? Yes, there was. And pioneer species grow up after a nuclear bombing. Yes, after the nuclear bombing, the soil will be broken and destroyed, and it's going to be a bad soil. But it is still a soil. So this is what a secondary succession. Okay, so thank you very much for watching. I hope this is helpful. You can watch the video again and again if you missed something, and have a wonderful day. Goodbye.